The FIA just uncovered something that was never meant to leave the McLaren garage. Hidden data. A silent rule breach. And a detail on Lando Norris's car that could change the entire championship. Because after the Barcelona tests ended, the FIA didn't look at lap times. They looked at legality. And what they found points to an advantage that should not exist. If this evidence is confirmed, Norris didn't just push the limits. He crossed one. And here's the part no one is talking about yet. This mistake does not hurt McLaren equally. It helps one driver. And it puts the other directly in the FIA spotlight. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this discovery could decide McLaren's season before the first race even starts. And if you want to stay ahead of stories like this, subscribe now. Barcelona. Cold air. Empty grandstands. No cameras. No noise. Just silence. And secrets. This wasn't a media day. This was private. 5 teams. 3 days. Dozens of quiet laps on fresh 2026 machinery. But for McLaren, it wasn't just a preseason test. It was a battlefield. One they didn't know they were already losing. Because while Lando Norris was flying around the circuit, locking in one of the fastest times of the entire week, his car was already under suspicion. The time? 1 minute, 16.9. Just behind Lewis Hamilton. Everyone in the paddock raised eyebrows. No one said anything publicly. But the FIA? They were already watching. Not because Norris was fast. Because his data looked too fast. Deployment levels, torque curves, energy release out of Sector 1. Something didn't add up. And by the time the car rolled back into the garage, inspectors were already requesting a full breakdown of the run. Not just tire temps. Not just fuel load. They wanted hybrid output numbers. And that's when McLaren knew this wasn't just a test anymore. They were now part of an investigation. And the real twist? Oscar Piastri, driving nearly the same car, was never flagged once. Same chassis. Same power unit. Different results. Different consequences. It wasn't a part. It wasn't a sensor. It wasn't even visible from the outside. What triggered the alarm was software. Specifically, a deployment map that governed how Norris's car released electric power. Now, under 2026 regulations, teams are required to limit electric boost per lap. The system can only release a set amount of energy, and only in specific zones. The idea is simple. Keep performance fair. Keep strategies clean. But when the FIA ran Norris's data through their compliance check, one section stood out. Sector 1. Turn 3 exit. The telemetry showed a torque spike, too sharp, too early. And under the new hybrid code? That's not supposed to happen. According to insiders, Norris's car briefly exceeded the electric output threshold for low-speed corner exits. Just by a few kilowatts. But in Formula 1, that's all it takes. And here's the part McLaren didn't want public. That specific energy map? It wasn't registered. It wasn't part of the FIA-declared test configuration. Which means, the moment Norris crossed the line with that setting active, his data became invalid. That lap? Wiped. That run? Excluded from legal performance analysis. And more importantly, that setup can no longer be used for Bahrain. But here's where it gets worse. Oscar Piastri's car used a different map. Fully declared. Fully legal. No red flags. Which now puts McLaren in an impossible situation. They built their race strategy around Norris's pace. But now? That pace doesn't exist. At least not in the eyes of the FIA. And the only driver whose data remains valid? Piastri. So the big question becomes, do they back the world champion? Or the driver who followed the rules? No one panicked. At least, not on the surface. But inside McLaren's technical team, priorities changed overnight. Norris's run had been the reference point. His sector times, his deployment, his setup philosophy. It was the template for Bahrain. Until it wasn't. Because with the FIA's invalidation, Norris's data became untouchable. Legally useless. And suddenly, the spotlight turned to the other garage. Oscar Piastri's. The car that ran clean. The lap that passed inspection. The telemetry that can be used. In less than 24 hours, McLaren shifted their simulator schedule. Piastri's setup was loaded first. His Bahrain strategy model became the base. His run was fed into tire wear simulations and energy efficiency curves. And quietly, without any official statement, McLaren made Piastri the control variable. Not Norris. It's a subtle shift. But in Formula 1, that subtlety is everything. Because when engineers start optimizing for one driver's data, the other driver falls behind. Not in talent. Not in raw pace, but in tools, in preparation, in confidence. And for Lando Norris, that changes everything. Last season, he was the one in control. The first choice setup, the first feedback, the first upgrade. But now, heading into round 1, he's chasing shadows. And Piastri? He's walking into Bahrain with the only legal map, the only fully approved performance baseline. That's not just a technical win. That's political leverage. And in a team as competitive as McLaren, that leverage can turn into power, fast. It started with Ferrari. The moment the FIA announced the investigation into Norris's energy deployment, Ferrari's technical delegate requested access to the compliance bulletin. That's not standard. That's tactical. Because if Norris exceeded energy output, even in testing, that opens the door for protest, for leverage, for pressure. And Ferrari's not alone. Red Bull moved quickly. Their simulation team began running Norris's sector data from turn 3 and turn 10. And what they found raised even more questions. The torque exit from Norris's car was sharper than anything Red Bull had seen in comparable conditions. Sharper than Piastri. Sharper than Hamilton. Even sharper than Verstappen. Too sharp. Unless something extra was at play. And that's exactly what Red Bull is hinting at. According to multiple insiders, Red Bull has already submitted a request to the FIA asking, if test data is invalidated, can the deployment strategy used during that session be carried into official race prep? Translation? They want clarity. Or they want McLaren stopped. Then came Mercedes. Their move was quieter, but maybe smarter. They reached out to Alpine. Why? Because Alpine also uses a similar hybrid deployment model. And Mercedes believes Alpine may have logged similar anomalies in the past. So if they can prove precedent, they can push for a wider review. Which means this isn't just about Norris anymore. It's about the system. It's about the software. And it's about who's allowed to use what. And when. And while all of that unfolds, Oscar Piastri? Untouched. Uninvolved. And perfectly positioned. Because while Norris is now caught in a political chess match, Piastri's name isn't even in the conversation. Which makes him, by default, the most secure McLaren driver heading into the season. And that security? It's starting to look like opportunity. After the FIA notice dropped, McLaren held 2 internal debriefs. One focused on technical compliance, the other on driver feedback. Piastri was first to speak. He was calm, precise, detailed. He praised the car. He praised the process. And he made it clear. We stayed inside the lines. Norris, he didn't say much. But what he did say set the room on edge. 6 words. No emotion. Just a flat sentence. I drove what I was given. That line landed hard. Because it didn't sound like a defense. It sounded like a separation. Like he was pushing blame. Distancing himself from the car. From the engineers. From the team. And inside McLaren, that triggered concern. Because when a driver disconnects emotionally, even slightly, trust fractures. And when trust fractures, development slows. Setup choices become debates. Feedback is second-guessed. Confidence gets replaced by caution. And caution? Kills performance. Meanwhile, Piastri's side of the garage is accelerating. More sim hours. More feedback loops. More trust. Not because he's faster. Not yet. But because right now, he's reliable. He's stable. He's unshaken. And for McLaren, in the middle of this political storm, stability is power. That's why, quietly, some engineers have begun shifting their energy, their time, their late nights, their calculations, toward Piastri. Not officially, not publicly, but if you look at the resource allocation, at who's testing what, at which side of the garage is getting first-run simulations, the shift is already happening. And Norris? He sees it. He feels it. He may still be the champion on paper, but inside his own team, he's no longer untouchable. Behind closed doors, McLaren's leadership team is already drafting parallel plans. One plan assumes everything stays stable. That Norris bounces back. That the FIA issue dies down quietly. That's the plan being sold publicly. In press releases. In interviews. In the calm, polished tone of corporate PR. But there's a second plan. And it's not being shared. Not yet. That plan is built around a different reality. One where Norris's data remains restricted. One where trust inside the garage keeps slipping. One where Bahrain doesn't reset the narrative. It confirms it. And that second plan? It's built around Oscar Piastri. Sources say McLaren's simulator team has already started modeling race strategy based on Piastri's Bahrain setup. Not just tire wear. Not just fuel loads. Full race deployment scenarios. That's not backup prep. That's leadership planning. And here's the key detail. In previous seasons, Norris always got first priority for pre-race modeling. Always. Now, Piastri's name is listed first. Not by accident. Not by rotation. By choice. Because the truth is, McLaren may not have the luxury of balance anymore. They're entering one of the most competitive seasons in modern F1 history. The 2026 hybrid regulations have leveled the playing field. And every point, every tenth of a second, every setup call, it all matters more than ever. So if Bahrain comes, and Piastri is faster again, cleaner, more composed, more adaptable under pressure, then McLaren won't wait until mid-season to make the call. They'll shift. Officially. Permanently. Not because they want to, but because they have to. Because in Formula 1, you don't back the name. You back the data. And right now, only one McLaren driver has both. The FIA hasn't announced a penalty. Not yet. But they don't need to. Because the damage is already done. Norris's test data, gone. His energy map, flagged. His status, questioned. And worst of all, his edge? Neutralized. Meanwhile, Oscar Piastri walks into Bahrain. Not as a number 2, but as the driver with the clean sheet. No controversy. No asterisk. No investigation. Just speed. Silence. And now, support. The engineers see it. The team feels it. The rivals sense it. Because when a garage starts to lean in one direction, it's hard to stop the momentum. And what started with a few quiet shifts in testing is now turning into something undeniable. Piastri didn't ask for this power. He earned it, lap by lap, with patience, with consistency. And while Norris spent the last few days dodging questions, internally and externally, Piastri just kept driving, just kept working, just kept gaining ground. And here's the truth McLaren may be too afraid to say. This season? It may already belong to Oscar. Not officially, not mathematically, but in the places that matter first. The strategy meetings, the simulator sessions, the technical briefings, the places where championships are actually built. And Lando Norris? He might still fight back. He might recover. But after what the FIA just exposed, after what McLaren is now forced to do, he's no longer defending a title. He's defending his position, inside his own team. And if Bahrain doesn't flip the script, if the pattern holds, this won't be a season about McLaren chasing Red Bull. It'll be a season about which McLaren driver survives the war already happening inside that garage.